Welcome back to Inspired Inc., the CWS podcast, a show where we promote indie comic creators and become inspired by what they create and their journey of creating it. I'm your host, Brandon Bloxdorf, and today on the show, we have Ian Walker, creator of the book Pantheon, and we talk about finding the right platform to have fans fund your craft, the importance of consistency when creating, and finding a process that works best for your projects. All this and so much more on today's Inspired Inc.
Comic books to life and print your comics with Comix Wellspring.
You were saying you had your Patreon and Ko-fi. I was just looking into Ko-fi recently. We're
Yeah.
looking to move Apollo over there because I run Apollo City Comics and our own publication. What got you to explore that realm? I'm still looking into it, so I'm very curious in your thoughts on it.
I've had the coffee set up for a while.
Mhm.
I've been trying so many ideas. I don't have a lot of patrons. I don't have. Yeah, it's funny. I think ever since Patreon started the free model, I think it's been a detriment, honestly, to a lot of patrons. What's up, Kitty?
Yeah, that's why it jumped up. He's gonna hang out. Sebastian's gonna hang
No,
out.
you're good. No, so I got a lot of free, people that have joined up. And I have a few patrons, but I was looking into coffee to just kind of look at how they do things and whether or not if if people didn't want to be stuck with a full subscription model, having money come out every month, that then maybe they'll be able to just donate a few bucks or something. The thing is, it's funny because I'm a great promoter for other people and I can show them how to do things and give them the strategies that work for them. But when it comes to myself, bro, I am trash. It is
I feel
garbage,
you.
bro. It is so much work and it is so much time and it is so the other side of the creative process of creating comics and
So
marketing yourself is just it's hard, man. It's a nightmare. And I have business acumen, like I say, for other people, but not myself. So it's a frustrating thing because I wish I could flip that over.
Yeah.
But, for myself, it's just, and that's a requirement, but it's very difficult when you're creative and, you're trying to make sure that you place make sure that you try to strike a balance between comic book creator and then businessman. One of those is bound to fall by the wayside, at least for me anyway. I don't know.
Oh, I 100%. I'm resonating with what you're saying right now.
Yeah.
We've been planning out Apollo's 2025. And so then it's like, okay, let's look at everything we said we were going to do in 2024 that we didn't accomplish and why.
Right.
And we had the Patreon set up and we were ranking in almost like $30 a month. But then we all got too busy and we weren't doing an upkeep. And then people financially have issues. They drop down from, the $10 tier to the 5 to the 1. And then you're just, then once the taxes get taken out from, it just turns into nothing. And you do a cash out. You're like, this wasn't that great, but we're trying it's hard to find that angle. Get people to care and pledge, and sign up for another thing and support you. Like it's rough.
And they're already, if you got good fans, they're already, setting money aside for your for your Kickstarter, So for them to be like, okay, so you want me to do this too? It's like, I only have so much, and I don't blame them, got bills to pay. Inflation's no game, no joke.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
100%. Groceries are rough right now.
Yeah, you really got to count your pennies. Yeah, I never thought I'd see a day where you got a budget to go to the movies. You know what I'm saying? Even a matinee. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yes, honestly, I
So
feel you.
the last thing anybody's going to do is try to pay for your comic book that you just made by yourself in a room. That's not even color. It's black and white.
You're trying to be cost effective on printing, and you're just like, the black and white is like the way to go. Yeah,
it's facts, bro. Facts. So it's just, but you gotta do what you gotta do, man. That's a part of this game. That's what it's about. And I do love it though. I do love it.
It's a weird pain we put ourselves through. You know what I mean? Like,
And
I
they,
just I got back from Baltimore Sunday night, and it was a crazy weekend being at the
uh-huh,
convention. It was just nonstop. Whenever I'm there at a convention, I'm promoting Apollo, but I'm typically, especially at Baltimore, I'm Comix Wellspring. And so we had the
mhm,
booth and I'm filming people. I'm talking to every table, being like, come print
right,
with us. And then I get home and Monday I was like, I gotta start fulfilling this Hyperforce Kickstarter. And I just start
right,
putting aside packages, and you're like, oh man, I
yeah,
forgot about these 7 things I gotta map out. And it's not even the creative process. It's just
yes.
the in between stuff you got to do. And you're like, I
Yeah,
haven't even posted about my books. I haven't made a thank you for
yeah,
everyone at Baltimore. And I was like, I don't
yeah.
got the bandwidth or energy to do that right now. Like, I need till
Telling you,
Thursday. The older I get, the harder it's getting to do cons too.
yeah, facts. I do cons. We started doing cons like hardcore 2 years ago, my wife and I.
Mhm.
And we the initial goal was we started slow at farmers markets and stuff like that, figuring out
It's a
what
good
worked, what
approach.
didn't work. Yeah. Huh?
Mhm. That's a good approach. I feel like
Oh,
starting with
yeah, yeah,
kind of local events more
yeah,
affordable, probably a bit better
exactly.
too.
Exactly. But we also got a feel on what people were interested in. And we found, the small town that we're in, so Lockhart is where we're actually at,
Oh, cool.
is they like the art, but it's not really their stage. They see a comic book and they're like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's neat. What is that? They just keep
Yeah.
walking past. There's no comic book store in the area, which I think is a crime. Um, all small towns should have one comic book
Yeah.
store. I
One
feel
beat
like
up shop. Yeah.
one
One in the
beat up
corner.
shop
Yeah.
that has nothing but long boxes stacked up against the wall on one side,
Yes.
a whole sticking tray of jacked up bins with the back issues,
Yes.
and then the very nice toys and other
Yeah, exactly.
stuff
And then
on
you
the
got your
side.
new
Yeah, that's
release
all
table,
cool.
and that's it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
yeah.
with the bathroom that nobody uses except the owner. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like that's that's that should be one. Yeah.
And I mean those type of towns. One, it's hard to find a base. I mean, luckily you're like kind of outside of Austin and whatnot, so there is
Yeah.
something you could kind of reach towards. But when you're
Mhm.
trying to like I'm in Winchester, Virginia myself, and it is a small town. We do there. I'm fortunate for my comic shop here, Four Color Fantasies. But other than that, I think it's the only shop within 60 miles. So I feel if like I didn't
Really?
wind up here, it would have been the only thing until I get closer to DC or something like that. But
Ooh,
yeah, yeah, kind of
ooh.
brutal. But you need that so shops to support you too. And as an
Yeah,
independent creator, having an outlet to take your books to at least be like, well, you can find it here and in our local shop. And that's what you're
right.
looking for that benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. In that aspect, I will say Austin is a lot easier for that. Um, you know, I've been able to so I run my own studio, Obsidian Studios,
Hmm.
my own publishing company. So what we do what I do, the process that I've created for myself, I'm more of an old school dude. I come from the era of the comics in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
You get to the back of the comic book, there's the letter section, where the company's really communicating with the fans like they used to.
Hmm.
I like that aspect. So I'm all about. I don't give a crap about diamond distribution. If that takes me out the running for a lot of stores, that's fine with me.
Same. I'm
you
same
know,
level on that. You
I'm
know what I
I'm
mean?
not
Like,
I'm not I'm not having somebody take 70% of what I've made of my blood, sweat, and tears, and just so that I can get $1 out of every out of the 8 that it's sold for. No, I work for this. I'm doing that. So that's made it so that my comic book has not been put in a store. I went to a comic shop last year sometime to go pitch my comic because I do everything on foot. I call
oh,
a, I
cool.
call a, I call it boots to the ground. So I put boots to the ground,
Yeah.
go to different comic shops all over. And I went to one shop and he legit looked at me, even though I brought a copy of the comic book, because like I always do with Comics Wellspring, and this is with every single issue, I'll order my 25 issue minimum with CWS, and I take those 25 and then I go to all the comic shops. I never assume that they want
Nice.
to continue keeping my comic in their
Right.
store. Never
Yeah.
assume that. So I go there, I show them my comic. Dude, I walked in, he said, "Oh, is your comic on Diamond?" I'm like, "No, it's not Diamond Distributed." He's all, "Oh, we don't deal in comics that aren't with Diamond." I'm like, "All right, bye."
Fine.
You
Yeah,
know,
fine.
I'm like,
This is,
my
it's
wife
up to
was
you
all
then.
mad. And it was like she gets mad for me. I don't ever have to get mad ever again. My wife believes me so much, but she's like,
Same.
but yeah, she's like, that was rude. It was funny, but I mean, it's like that. You know, I believe in building a relationship with your local comic stores. They get to know you as a person. They see what kind of work you put out, and the most important thing is that you're consistent. You know, that you're constantly bringing them something.
Yep.
What I do for myself, because we all know, and this is not of any fault of any indie creators out there, but life happens. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
1, 2 issues, maybe 3 if you really on it. And sometimes the max issues you'll see of some stuff.
Yeah.
Before it just disappears. And that's why you see a lot of indies now that I noticed going to. I went to Comic Indie Con this past weekend, and noticed there were a lot of creators that had like small graphic novels
Yeah.
of a full story, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll put out a full story and call it the first issue, but it's like it has maybe 2 or 3 issues in it, but they call that the first issue because it's just so much time to do that, and they're kind of compensating for real life issues that could get in the way, or whatever.
Right.
So I get it, but consistency for me is super important. Every 4 months, I try my best to come out with an issue of Pantheon. That includes from conception to writing to, you know, actually drawing the book. If I'm really on it, like laser focused, I can get a book done in about a month. And doing it in black and white helps with that process. And then, you know, promotion, Kickstarter, you got to allow for that, you know, all of that, and then fulfillment of that. And then, you know, setting up signings and then getting it in the stores. It's all of those things. So my goal is to not have people forget about Pantheon.
Right.
Because
And you're really on it because you're one of the creators that, like, when I started popping up and doing this show, I feel like you were right on board right when it started. And I've seen you in Spilled Ink. I've seen you broadcast stuff. I've never seen you stop on social media. Like you're pro. And that's why, you know, a lot of creators, we get so many people wanting to fill this out and come on the show and do things and everything. And I try to get everyone I can, but it's really the ones that like are there in my forefront where I'm just like, you know, especially when I'm like, oh, I got to schedule something now. Who do I talk to? And it's like, bam, this dude's always, you know, right there, ready, like professional, like up to do it. And I love that. I love the indie creator that won't back down. That's just always adamant. Like we all take breaks. We all take a moment to ourselves, a week or two, sometimes a month, you know. But like if you're always in there and in their face and showing like, hey, I'm doing work, hey, I'm doing this, like progress, anything, that means a lot. That shows a lot. And it keeps your audience knowing like, oh, they're alive, they're working at this, like this isn't stopping for them, this is passion, not just like I tried it once because it was COVID and now it's over, I'm giving up type of thing, you know?
The COVID comics.
Honestly, we got that thousands of them, and now you know you really do see who, like it's just like with podcasts, you know, a lot of podcasts came out of that period, and you know some people don't even make it to episode 5, you know, you're lucky to make it to episode 50. But it's just that consistency, and that's what being a creator is just showing up. At least if you just show up, you're half the battle. I feel is almost done. You know, you'll get opportunities, things will happen. You just got to be there and you know put your time in and effort. And like with Pantheon, you know, you've been at it with this routine. Do you feel like that's paying off for you hitting issue 4? How do you think, you know, because this is where comics get really, I feel like stagnant too, is after your 3rd issue into that 4th into 6th. And I've even seen creators do a trade with their first 3 to be like, this will catch them up. That way, if, you know, I'm selling issue 4 beyond, they could get the trade and they could pick up the single issues, like have options. What's your mindset about all that?
First off, it is a challenge. But the thing is, the reason why I feel like this is much different, I think, than most is because I made sure that when I took this project on, let me go back. So, like I mentioned in an earlier conversation, Pantheon is more of a legacy project. I started professional in 2008, you know, where I got paid for my artwork. I did little comics here and there. I had a little webtoon called The Swagger Knots. Shout out to Steve Lisewski if you're listening. He was my first colorist ever that I hired to color my comic.
Ooh, that's
Swagger
cool.
Knots. Then I was on DeviantArt for a very long time, and I
Mhm.
created a character that was exclusively there called White Ninja Guy. Imagine a 4'10" ninja that's dressed in white with a gigantic sword. That's like Deadpool, super funny. He is literally the strongest being in the entire universe of all known creation, but no one cares because he's 4'10" white ninja dressed in white. Who does that?
It's amazing.
You know, that's the he's fought aliens, he's defended the earth and everything, and he tells people this, and everybody's like, "Shut your mouth, little guy. What are you doing?" You know.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I did that for a little bit. I came out with a one shot of all the little comics that I did and compiled them in, and that was on Obsidian a long time ago, back in I'll say about 2012. But it wasn't a full on series. It wasn't something that I could say was if something were to happen to me and I died suddenly, people would remember me. Yeah, Ian, you should draw cool pictures.
Mm.
I didn't want that. I tell people I love comic books, that I can create comic books, and I, do comic books, but I didn't have anything to show for it. I had a lot of ideas for comic books, which is that trap that a lot of us artists that want to create do.
Yep.
We draw a lot of pictures of our characters. We draw our ideas, but we don't execute our ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a problem.
And that's the hardest part too, is the execution.
It
It's like
is.
getting moving and whatnot. You know what I mean?
It
But
is.
once you
It
break
is.
that,
It is. And
stuff
sometimes
starts to happen.
right. And sometimes I think a lot of artists fool ourselves into thinking that just because we're drawing it out, that we're executing on it. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. I can tell you firsthand.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I wanted to create something that was legacy. If something happened to me, I wanted to be like Ian came out with an amazing story that was something that was out there that is a literal physical embodiment of something that he loved, that is left out there in the world for people to grab, and get and read,
Love that.
get to know a little bit about myself. Because every
Mm-hmm.
character that I create has a little piece of myself within them, as I'm sure every creator does.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what that was. And also it was a challenge for me personally to see if I could even do it.
Yeah.
I broke the number one rule of all indie comic creation, is when you first make comics, don't make a long series
Yeah.
of his comic series. Make small issues, make small ones, 8 pages, 8 pages. I broke that rule because I already knew within myself that I was going to be able. I could do that.
Well,
I
you had that
enjoyed
webtoon experience too. Like you kind of already
Yeah.
did that in a sense too. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? I wouldn't say you cheated yourself or you broke rules. I feel like you did that. You knew you were capable of at least that. So now why not
Mhm.
challenge yourself as much as possible? Because now you
Mhm.
feel like the time is ripe. This is when you got to
Yeah.
do it. And once you have that calling, especially you doing it on your own, you're setting up
Yeah.
a challenge and you're meeting it. You know what I mean? Like it looks like this was
Mhm.
something you seem like someone who won't back down from something once your mind is set on it too. So I feel like once that you were like, this is the series, this is what I'm doing, there was no other option for you at that point.
Right. Right. And trust me, I went through the hurdles. I wanted to do it in color at first. That was something I wanted to do. And then I found out really quickly that I don't like coloring. I can do it. I don't like
That
it.
makes sense.
It
Yeah.
completely slows down my motivation. It completely kills the drive for me.
That
So,
makes sense.
and then also too, I know I didn't have the money to do it either. So for me, what was the most cost effective way to go about creating Pantheon and still telling the story and it still looks cool, possibly? Okay, let's chop this up and make this an American style manga idea type of story by making it black and white. And so I saved money, but also am able to tell, a cool story at the same time. So anybody that looks, I didn't make this black and white because I wanted to be like a manga. It was cost efficient, it worked, and it was awesome. But it turned out being, a great decision that I think has allowed me to continue going this far and get this far. I think if I had gone and done it in color, I'd probably still be on issue 2 right now.
Yeah,
It would have
because
taken a
that's
longer
a
time.
different mindset, a different like you coloring. I get intimidated. I'm barely learning how to draw. Like that's why we do the live drawing show building. That's where I'm trying to get practice in and
Mhm.
coloring. I just got some markers this past weekend and being like, all right,
Hey,
I at least gotta attempt it. You know what I mean? Just get
which
like
ones you get?
an
Which one?
understand. It was just some Posca markers, just to like they were like
Oscars?
$30,
Oh,
and I
okay,
was
cool,
Poscas.
cool,
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah. They were cool. Yeah, I've used them once
Hey man,
before, and I was like,
cheap
all right,
markers. Everybody out there, some good cheap high end markers. They're called Ohuhu markers.
oh,
I'm a preach that gospel. The Ohuhu
I would love
markers,
to
they're
check those out.
bright. They're like they are awesome. I've never had a marker where you look at the color on the cap and then you put it on the paper and it's exactly the same color.
Oh,
That's so
that's amazing.
that's really
Yeah,
nice. And it's the Honolulu set. There's
it's
those along with my full set of Copic grays.
oof, I bet.
So any marker
Yeah, that's
artist,
what I got to get. Copic Grays because I
yeah,
don't do a lot of coloring. It's a lot for my brain.
right,
It's a lot to keep up with, and I'm just like, if
yeah,
I could just do black and whites. A lot of my comics are make Teenage Babylon, Fake Your Death. That's all
mhm,
black and white because I'm just like,
there you go.
it's what you're saying and what you're expressing through black and white sometimes just works out better. I mean, there's a reason why Sin
Yeah,
City looks so good. You know what I mean? It's that
right,
contrast, and if that's
right.
what you're aiming for, and for your book, it works wonderfully too. Like there's a
It
great
does.
balance between the two, and once you figure that out, you're like, color might just corrupt this in a bit.
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate too that it did work out that way. One of the things, another thing with Pantheon too is I have a huge issue, as all of us artists do, is I try to do an experiment where I'm trying to destroy my perfectionism
Hmm.
or my
Nice.
extreme perfectionism. I started painting because I do painting as well, paintings,
Oh, right.
portraiture with charcoal. I do all the art things. Um, but I started painting as a way to one help me get through some stuff that was going on in my life to get that creativity out, but also to help with my perfectionism. Because when you put paint down on a canvas, that's it. And that
Yeah.
was my rule. I mean, you
Mhm.
can fix it, but my rule was I'm gonna put it down, and whatever's on the canvas is on the canvas. Kind of like
Yeah.
Bob Ross.
Yeah.
Happy accidents, create those. You
Hmm.
know, so so I was able to do that with painting, but then when it came back to creating comics, I was right back into that old mindset. So there
Nice.
would be a lot of projects I would start, I wouldn't finish, I would think about it, I don't know. But when I created Pantheon and decided, you know what, I'm doing this, and here's my plan. I'm going to draw everything as is, do my best,
Hmm.
make sure that it is. I'm happy enough for it to go to print for people to see it, and it's not going to be perfect, but move forward, no
Yep.
matter what. Move
Yep.
forward.
Because you'll just be
So
stuck on that page, that panel,
exactly.
weeks, days, like.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So when I do that, for myself, one of the best tools that an artist can have is seeing their own progress. I think that's the number one cure to imposter syndrome. One of the number one, I'll say not cures, one of the number one medicines for imposter
There
syndrome,
you go.
for
Yep.
all of those
Yep.
things, is physically seeing your own progress in your artwork and in the stories that you're telling. I look at my issue 1 issue of Pantheon, man, and I'm like, I mean, I like it. This is the first time I look back at it. I'm not like, yuck. I look at a lot of my old artwork and I'm like, ew, what is that?
Yeah, I figured.
But
Yeah.
this, I'm like, okay, that's pretty solid. It's pretty decent. And then going to issue 4, and I'm like, man, I learned some stuff. It's still not
Mhm.
perfect, but you
But
could
there's
tell that
growth.
I'm learning. There's growth. And that's what I want other people to see too. And I'm hoping that other creators who see it see the same thing, and people who want to make comics also see that as well. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start. You know what I'm saying? Do the best you
Mhm.
can. Start and just keep moving forward. You know. So that's really the gist, and that's why I call Pantheon my legacy, because it's my proving ground. Want to see if I can be in this industry and do it and do it well.
And
And
finish a story too, I'm sure.
huh?
And finish a story, like, in full and
Yeah,
complete and put it all together, and that's a big challenge. That's a big I mean, hitting issue 4 is a huge feat in general,
yeah,
Like, I think props to you on that because
appreciate
that's
it.
like, are you looking for a 6-issue series just to get started on this? Or what was your mindset when you're planning out Pantheon in general? Like, how far were you trying to reach for?
So there are going to be a total of 18 issues. Pantheon.
Mm. So
6
you were, yeah,
issues,
you
3
were
arcs,
jumping the
6
shark. Yeah, that's a
issues.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
6 issues, 3 arcs each.
Nice.
I'm sorry, 3 arcs, 6 issues each.
Oh, that makes, yeah, there you go.
So there are
I'm bad at math. Would have added up no matter
nah, me
what.
too. I can read and spell like a beast, but don't give me numbers, bro. No, but so before I even got started, I have this whole story plotted out already. It's sitting on my computer. It's ready to go. And I know what's going on in my head. Now, as I've been creating it, there have been some tweaks, some changes. And that's helped out a lot. I created a full synopsis of the entire story. I created a full outline of the first arc. I've created individual issue synopses for each issue. And then when I start an issue, I go based on each issue synopsis and create a script based on that. When I'm done with the complete comic, I go back to that synopsis and then do the same thing with the second issue, rinse and repeat. And whatever changes there are, if I find that there's plot holes somewhere that I may have changed, I deal with that. And again, taking a cue from, manga and Japanese animation and their storytelling beats, I really try to go with that. Like you said, Pantheon is a different superhero book where it's not a whole bunch of punch you in the face and wham bam.
Yeah.
It is a lot of story. It is pretty wordy, I will say.
Yeah, I was. It's not
but
a
I'm telling the
comic to
story.
sit down like in 5 minutes and read. You're like,
No,
yeah, you're not gonna
no,
like
not at
devour
all.
this. You're gonna get your money's worth out of it from not just the
Yeah,
art, but like the story. Like it was dense, and I was like, this is like you're just getting fed information, but like in a very smooth and concise way. I could tell the way
yeah,
you're laying out your issue is very, in particular as
yeah.
well. And
Even
that's what makes it enjoyable.
even when I create my covers for my books, they're not a lot of comic books now. They'll have a cover being made, and they have nothing to do with what's inside. That's not
Right.
that's not what I'm doing at all. Every cover issue that you see, it has to do with the story that's inside. So the very first issue of Pantheon you guys see with Vassell, who's the main character, and his uncle, Justice Giorum, they're on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
You open up the book, you see that's who the main two are.
Mm-hmm.
Is that relationship? What's going on? What's being built there? Issue 2, you see Pantheon on the front of the cover.
Mm-hmm.
There's a B cover where again Pantheon is on the cover. Well, what's happening in that second issue? Pantheon presents himself to the world. I mean, so every issue has something, there that's very cohesive to the story, but at the same time, striking that balance to still keep the cover captivating to where
Yep.
people will see it in a comic or at a convention, be like, "Oh wait, what's this?"
Yeah. Yeah. Spark curiosity.
That's what I'm trying to go for. So, and I love creating. Like I said, I hate coloring in tiers of a comic, but I love creating comic book covers, man. Oh man,
It's a different. I mean, in general, pinups or covers are so different than sequential interiors.
It is. It
And
is.
so I could see why there's a bit more of a playing ground with a cover or a
Mhm.
pinup. You could do a lot more. Where like when you're telling a sequential story, you have to be very almost mathematic on how, maybe you're just using 4 different colors and you're going to try to balance those 4 colors out through the
Yeah.
whole book. Or if you're using an arsenal, you know what I mean? How are you telling the story with the colors? That's an entire different
Yeah.
part to peel open.
Yeah.
But if you're focused on the black and whites, you could kind of capture that because you're already within that moment and you're like,
Mhm.
you're containing it. And the more you contain, it's easier and more difficult at the same time.
Exactly. And you're exactly right. That's why I felt that right away when I tried to start coloring the book. I was like, this is a whole other can of worms that I really don't have the time nor the desire to delve into. I have, if I'm going to keep going and keep moving like I promised myself, one of these has to go.
Yeah.
And for me, that was
the smartest move, I feel like, because you can't sacrifice lettering. You know what I mean? That like
no,
bad lettering will,
Dude.
destroy good art, destroy a good story.
Yeah.
Good or great lettering will like make bad art look great, and bad story sound good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so much. There's important layers you have to hit. And
Yeah.
honestly, and this isn't to down coloring or colorist at all. It's more of just like
No.
you're finding what works for you to make sure your product gets out there. And if you're going to cut something in what you're doing, that was the thing you had to cut. Like you're not cutting pencils and inks. You know what I mean? You're not cutting those
you cannot
aspects.
cut that. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's the journey with that one, as far as why the book had to be made, why I do it the way that I did it. So
And your covers too, like, what's great about them is that you get that vibrancy that makes people curious and it gives it an immediate comic book vibe, but also lets you know what the characters or what that world, the coloring would feel like. So once you get that taste and that
yeah,
flavor, you're still able to open the book and like feel that out and understand it. And you're not like kind of thrown off or lost. So that's a good
hmm
balance. And then, I mean, plus the black and white, it resonates like really well throughout comic book making history in general, from like Sunday strips to like manga influences to like things in the 80s, Frank Miller stuff and things like that were just like in black and white. It's such an enriching thing. I feel like people forget how well that's done in comics and how you have
yeah,
those type of options.
yeah,
So that's
yeah,
it's a solid approach, especially when you're chasing a single creator. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's a lot. That's a lot of fun.
yeah.
And so like what are we have 3 arcs, you know, 18 issues in total. This is all pre-written already, like all your arcs. Are you doing it like 6 by 6?
So it's 6 by 6. So I have the whole entire synopsis, the whole summary of the entire story written out
Mhm.
there, and each of the arcs synopsis, all of those written out. The issues themselves are not written yet.
Okay,
And the
cool.
reason why I do those issue by issue, and the reason why is because, like I said, as you go along the creation process and you're drawing the book and things happen, you come up with ideas, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
you know what? That doesn't make sense for me to do this. Let me go back and do this. Let me put this in. So then when I go back to start the next issue, I may have had an idea that had already pre-written for synopsis. But now that I made a change in the book, that no longer works.
Mhm.
Or what I have on the screen there creates a plot hole where if I were to go with that, it would create a plot hole with what I've already put down. So
Yep.
I have to go back and change that when I go and create the new script with those new ideas in mind or those changes. So that's why I don't write the scripts ahead of time, because it still
Oh,
allows me room for change. However, having a summary already written out for each issue
mhm.
prevents writer's block. It
There you go. Yep.
prevents you from having to from being stuck in a spot. And that's something like when I teach other people how to make comic books, to make comics, I teach that approach because one of the biggest things that holds people up is the writing process. Sometimes they're like, I don't know what to do. You don't do, you draw your character out. When I teach people, I tell them, you draw your character out so you have a vision of who your character is. Do that.
Mhm.
You need that. Because
Yeah.
I do that when I approach each of my new issues, I always draw the cover first. So that's
Oh,
my
cool.
motivation to say,
Yeah.
okay, got the cover done. Now it's time to get to work because now that
Mhm.
cover has to have something in it. So
Mhm.
I tell people, hey, draw your character out, get that vision, but now put it aside and write your story.
Mm.
So that story has to be done first, and it has to make sense first before you
Yeah.
put pen to paper. Um, so it helps doing it that way because that way I'm not stuck and I'm not holed up in any way. So the thing that I did was I made sure going about this, I set up a series of systems
Mhm.
to make sure that when I'm going through this process, it's something that I'm completely used to. There's a routine. There's a lot of time frame that I figured out how to do it. If I decide I want to take a break sometimes,
Mhm.
because generally after the Kickstarter's over, I take about a 2-3 week break to breathe. Be
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah,
okay,
definitely. Got to.
before
Yeah.
I, before sometimes I'll even write the 5th issue. Now the 5th issue, I was so hyped up with where everything was going, so excited that the 4th issue was out. I got the 5th issue done,
Oh,
the 5th
cool.
issue script done. The script is done.
Nice.
Now it's not completed, but it's
Mhm.
done being written. So I got to go back with fresh eyes after the campaign, look at it and be like, okay, that was ridiculous. I need to take that out and do some rewriting with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
But the fact that I've got that done, is cool. And that will happen sometimes. But in general, it allows me to take a break. I have certain routines set in play to where, okay, I can breathe a little bit here. Okay, I have a show coming up. I know I have this going on. So I can go do that without worrying that, oh, I need to go get home and do pages
Yep.
or need to go home and do writing with whatever. Having those systems in place eliminates a lot of that potential future panic or future, stuff like that. And your boy's a procrastinator. I'm Dr.
I've,
Procrastination,
yep.
Dr. Selwyn Procrastination, MD, because I am I'm terrible at that. So having everything in place, you know, prevents a lot of that,
Yeah.
and as a creator, man, once you get in that zone, bro,
Oh, that's it.
it's
You're
just that
there.
flow state. Oh my
Hmm.
God. So imagine going in a flow state, but having everything already set with how you're going to do it. The flow state
Yep.
is way more efficient. It's not just a
Oh,
flow
yeah.
state where it's just going off a feeling, but it's a more efficient flow state. And that's what I try to strive for when I create my books.
Because then, I love that because that's exactly how I work. I have, Teenage Babylon and Fake Your Death are all mapped out. Every issue is outlined with a big, dense paragraph of what's happening. And I know that paragraph is dense enough for me to like break down through, whatever, 20, 30 pages pretty much. And so,
Right.
like, if I don't get to, you publish stuff, you do all this, you do everything. So when you're caught up with everything else and you're like, oh man, I haven't actually written an issue in months, how do I just pick this back up?
Yeah.
You just go back and you're like, oh, I have a paragraph. I have a North Star. I have
That,
I know what the story is trying to say, where they're going. And then you're just fleshing it out. And when you're fleshing it out and really expanding that outline, that's your discovery period. A lot of people think discovery period is like, oh, I'm just going to sit down, whatever comes out when I type or do whatever.
nah,
That's what's going to, no, that does not work.
no,
I'm so sorry.
not at
Cause then
all.
like
Not at
books don't
all.
come out well. Stories don't come out well. Like you're just
Plot
blabbering
holes galore,
ideas.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got plot holes like the roads in Texas, bro. That's just is terrible.
And it's what you gotta hopefully learn or get feedback on, early in your career to be like, maybe, when people talk about discovery period, they still like have been playing a movie in their head over and over. They're just translating that movie onto paper and adding in all the holes that we're missing because you're not really fleshing it all out in your head. You could put key moments, maybe a key phrase, a sentence, and stuff like that. But it's
Right.
not till you sit down and you're like, okay, we're in the scene. What's happening? And then all of a sudden it starts coming out because you have all the placements there and it's not like, oh, and then this happens and not this happens. It's like, oh, well, this happens. Oh, that happened now because of that. This is going to happen. And you're going to have turning points like crazy. Because if some people just be like, oh, this and this and this and this, that's not a story. Like this happened. And because of this happened.
Exactly.
And
You're going
then,
right out of my mouth, bro.
yeah, like it's results.
Yes.
It's not so much where, I don't know. There's a whole list of ways to do it, but discovery is within your outline, or maybe when you're creating your outline, not within the true writing period.
Exactly. Man, you snatched
And
the
I'm
words
sure
right out
it's
of
the same
my
thing
mouth,
with
man.
art,
Right.
and with your art too. I'm sure you have the thumbnails and then pencils and then inks. Like, what's your process when you're actually hitting the page? Like, is it very similar to your scripting?
Yeah, when I go about doing my pages, I do I go through the whole issue of nothing but thumbnails first. Do all thumbs. I don't do thumbs page 1, thumbs page 2. I do the whole issue in thumbs. And the reason why is I do a whole issue in thumbs is because there still has to be a flow, as far as I'm concerned, with our pacing, as far as I'm concerned, with page arrangement and stuff like that. Making sure that I'm not repeating, panel arrangements, making sure that I'm not, over highlighting a character in a panel or in a scene that shouldn't be highlighted. Just because it looks cool, does that serve the story?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's a big difference.
You can't do that. A huge thing with me is conveying emotions of the characters in those panels. I'm very huge on showing emotion in the panels. Issue 4 is going to be very big in that. You said you just finished reading issue 3. You saw what happened there.
Yeah.
That one panel, and I'm pretty sure you might know which one I'm talking about. I want the reader to feel all the emotional feels of what happened there. So, an issue, and so the aftermath of that, and seeing how Vasella's going to have to, or Cedric is going to have to deal with those consequences and take responsibility, is going to be very felt, very much felt. So the panels have to show that as well. A person that's reading can't really get immersed into the story if they just see a side view. Oh my God. No, it don't,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
don't work.
yeah, yeah,
It's
exactly.
got to be shown. What place is appropriate for panel breaks. Because I'm
Hmm.
huge on panel breaks. Like I say, I like the old school. A lot of comics don't do much panel breaks anymore, and if they do, they're
Right.
very
True.
minimal. I
Yeah.
brought that back. I love panel breaks. It's cool.
Hmm.
So I think it's a great tool in storytelling that's been put to the wayside. But I use it only for the sake of emotion in the story, if it
Yeah.
makes sense.
Pacing. It's part of the
Pacing,
pacing. You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like it
Yeah,
means a lot. Like you're
yeah.
controlling the reader. And so trying to
Mhm.
grip that and wrangle them in as much as you need to get that motion come across. And especially because you're dealing with black and white, you're
Yeah.
very particular about like how things are landing and how things are
Mhm.
presented so they don't look too muddy. So things don't
Exactly.
blend in. You still have textures. Well, you brought up your grays that you use, and that's such a
Mhm.
vital part of your comic. It's not just black and white, but that grayscale really
Yeah,
does help convey
yeah.
some emotion and aspects that coloring would balance out too.
And I'm still learning that. I'm still learning that. And I feel like each issue I get progressively better and better.
Mhm.
Um, but I got to tell you, doing the grays, it's hard. And when I use tones as well, I'm not just using grays, but I also use tones,
Mhm.
zipper tones type of
Yeah.
things. So it's difficult.
Do you
I'm
cut them
learning
or
that.
do you like do that digitally? Do you do
No,
like the
no, it's
handwritten?
digital. It's the
Oh, okay.
dude. I cannot do. No, I ain't got.
It
If
is
I
rough.
can't color, man, what makes you think I can do it physical? Nah, bro. That's all digital, Playboy. Um, nah, so that's all digital. But even though it is easier doing it digitally, it's still a balancing act.
Science.
Learning how to wear in some spots to keep the solid gray colors where it makes sense, but also putting these tones where it makes sense. Do I want the skin tones to be zipper tone type, or do I want it to be regular? It's so much. It's so
And
much. So I'm learning
consistency.
that. Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm trying to go for consistency. I'm trying to still stay consistent with it. But, I'm still learning and I still have so much to learn about it. But I'm hoping that by the time, you know, I finish the first arc, I'll have a better grasp of it.
Mhm.
And then series 2 and series 3, I'll find a rhythm and a flow that actually works. That is cohesive. By the third arc, I want it to be, because the arc 3 is like the meat, man.
Yeah.
So I would like for it to be pretty much cinched up by that point, and really I really have it together by that point.
We know running a crowdfunding campaign is tough. That's why Comics Wellspring wants to help you out. We offer an exclusive crowdfunding partnership program when you print with us and mention us in your campaigns. When you use our program, you'll get a discount on printing and social media shoutouts to help promote your project. For more details, check out the link in the description. Now, back to the conversation with Ian Walker. Oh yeah, and I'm sure because I mean you're 4 issues in right now, and you could see the growth within your art from issue 1 just by like looking at it, like from previews and everything. And that's the thing people worry about, like, oh well, if I did issue 1 and now I'm on issue 5, my art has changed so much, right? I've gained so much skill. It's like most people who read indie comics like really do adore that. Like it's not something to
Yeah,
be too caught up in or
embrace that.
self-centered about. Yeah, embrace it.
Yeah.
Like embrace the change because it's someone reading that is gonna be like, oh, look at issue 1. Oh man, they
Mhm.
made leaps and bounds between issue 1 and
Right.
2. And then between you finish that series, you're on issue 7, dude. The book is gonna look different at issue 7. I'm sure
And that's a
your style is
blessing.
gonna like evolve.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah. No.
blessing that indie
Mhm.
creators need to really embrace, because it's a blessing that you're not one of the big three. Because when
Yeah.
you're one of the big three, there's already a set standard that's expected.
Hmm.
But you can
And you could only
afford to
wiggle
have it.
around so much. Like
Right,
you
right,
can't really change stuff up, really.
right. You can afford to, and you can have the room to grow and experiment, because what makes indie comics so great and wonderful and so different is that not only are you growing as an artist in what you're
Mhm.
doing, the the reader is growing with you too. They're
Yeah.
learning, they're seeing you, and they're becoming like super fans. If they
Yeah.
really like what you're doing,
Hmm.
you're creating like a super fan. They could literally say, man, I've been here with you from the beginning, man. When your
Yeah.
art was stick figures to
Yeah.
stinking art germ status. You know what I'm saying? They're with you, you know?
Yeah.
I would rather have 100 solid Pantheon fans, you know, than hundreds of thousands of, you know, fans that I did a book on, you know, DC or something, man. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
true. Like true
And
real people who are there that like
yeah,
adore you and humble. Like it kind of brings you down to earth in a sense. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
you plus and you know, I do cons all the time, and I grew up, you know, when I first started doing conventions, I was really just collecting. I was getting
Mhm,
signatures, I was going out there, I was doing the CGC game and all that type of
mhm.
stuff and flipping
Yeah,
exclusives and trying to make my money back by doing stuff like that. And like
right.
you realize that so many of those fans are really just like collectors, and you're, you know, a lot of those people, you think your book is doing this and that, when it's like, yeah, these
Yeah,
collectors are doing getting your signature a lot, but it's not really going towards people who like genuinely love and adore it. Like I'd much
right.
rather, yeah, where you said 50, 100 true people buying and supporting. I think there's
Mhm.
a whole, like there's like I heard something recently, there's like a like whatever, like 100 fans are worth more than like a thousand admirers or something, and you could live as a
Yeah,
creator off of 100 fans or something like that. If you do X, Y, and Z, and they each, you know, give
yeah,
you $10, you know, stuff like that. Like
yeah,
that's where the Patreon, I guess, talk comes into, you know, like
yeah.
where you're just like, I need to hit this much per month to be able to like cover my, you know, my art supplies and this and my
Mhm.
paper, and that way it's easier for you to survive. That's really
Right,
what we're trying to do, is find that core base of people that'll help us achieve these goals, because they're just as hyped about us creating it.
right, right. And that's the whole, you know, process of doing what reason of doing what I'm doing, trying to get on podcasts, trying to
Mhm.
do more. And like I said, this fourth issue is me again. This whole thing has been a learning process. How to promote, how to go about, you know, telling more people about your book instead of just going to cons or whatever.
Yeah.
But going to cons, getting out there, making connections with other indie artists and
Mhm.
other people that do the same thing that I've done and done it for a longer time. Just all of these things and building these resources and not gatekeeping it, but showing it to other people too. Like I say, I teach other
Yes.
people how to make comic books. I take mentorships. Actually, in January, I'm going to start taking mentorships
Oh, cool.
for 3 comic. I'm choosing 3 people starting in January. Probably start the selection process in December, and I'm going to take them through my process of how to do it. I'm going to show them everything that I've learned and help them through it.
Love
And
that.
you know, they're going to be able to make a comic book too,
Mhm.
because one, it's a lot of work, but what I wish I had a lot more of was somebody to take my hand, because I do personally learn better when there's someone guiding me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've done better, but I've done okay for myself. But if I can be somebody that can be like, hey, you know, first, what is it? I mean, you got to pay for the time, of course. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
sit there
Yeah.
and
Yeah. No,
sugarcoat
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but
Honestly.
pay for the time. But they're gonna take it seriously, hopefully.
Mhm.
And when you have someone showing them step by step how to go about it, what I've done, what's successful, and then also to possibly learning from each other. You know,
Yeah.
one cat I met at a Comic IndieCon this past weekend. Well, I'm telling him about the mentorship program, blah 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 blah, that I'm starting, and then I go back later on and I look at, you know, stuff that he's doing already. Man, this dude got the promotional side on lock. This guy's been on
Mhm.
the news. He's had all kind of press releases done. He's been on multiple podcasts. So that aspect, he's going
Covered.
it. He
Yeah.
knows what to do with that. So, you
Mhm.
know, so I can take him, if he were to do something like that, I could take him and put him in a different trajectory. Be like, okay, now for comic book creation would be something that he could, you know,
Yeah.
possibly use, or some other aspect of the process. So, um, go back to what I was saying, you know, it's just, it would be nice to have, I think it'd be nice for people to have that
Yeah.
guiding
No.
hand and that
It's what
mentorship.
people I was real fortunate. Like I had like Mark Bernal was a great mentor of mine, and he's still he runs Lesser Known Comics, and Mark is the reason why I made the punk anthology and why Teenage
Mhm.
Babylon's on its way and why
Yeah.
Apollo what it is. And I had people like Dan Hills who, he was just doing marketing at Comics Wellspring when I first met him, and now he's CEO, and I got this opportunity. And
Mhm.
it's about who you meet and where you find places, because you never
100.
know who you're gonna meet that's gonna change your life. You never know about that one little piece of advice that you're like, oh, I guess that's what sticks. I'm gonna try that out. If I
Yeah.
didn't listen to Mark about being like, he told me I was pitching Teenage Babylon at Baltimore Comic Con 2 years ago. And I was like, it's this cosmic punk rock love story I'm working on. He's like, stop talking about that for now. Do a punk anthology. So you build a punk rock base, punk rock comic book loving fan base. And then when you launch, Teenage Babylon, they'll be like, oh, that punk anthology guy, he just put out a punk rock comic book. You already have a base set up. And if I didn't do that first maneuver, if I didn't take that one piece of advice he gave me, I would
Yeah.
not be on the trajectory I am now. And so like people like you offering that and giving that out there, and like them supporting you at the same time, there's going to be
Yeah.
a lot of growth, and there's going to be connections, and you're going to learn things from cons. You're going to get advice. You're going to be like, oh, I know how to get you on, the Comics Wellspring show, blah, 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 all this type of stuff. You open up
Yeah.
doors and avenues for people. And that's what I love doing. I love
Yeah.
giving opportunities. I love opening doors for people, because to me, that's
Exactly.
what really matters.
Yeah. One
I think
one of the things going on with that, I mean, there's so much stuff, because there's so much stuff other than what I'm doing, and like what you're doing is providing mentorship is huge for me.
Mhm.
Showing people how to do what they do, like anthologies. I'm gonna start doing a series of anthologies. At first, it was going to be a magazine that highlighted indie creators,
Mhm.
but I've decided that I'm going to switch it to where it'll be an anthology book that I'll put out. I'm thinking like twice a year.
Nice.
And it's called Illustrata, and what it'll be anthologies. It'll
Love
be
that.
an anthology book, and the first issue, and actually folks who might be listening right now probably are going to hear this for the first time here on the show. Illustrata is going to the first issue of Illustrata will be at a local comic shop here in Austin, which is it's specifically for that comic book store. They can only sell it. You'll only get it at that comic book store or through each of the artists who have participated in the anthology at shows or otherwise. So you can only get it from the artists at the shows or at that specific comic book shop. It will not be in other comic book shops. But Illustrata will be the first. That first issue will be Illustrata. So what I want to do is have more of those anthologies, and again, using that as a guide to help people in the process, because a lot of people like the idea of creating comic books.
Yeah.
They don't know the work that goes into it.
Right.
A person's like, oh, I want to create a comic book, but you've been drawing pictures the whole time. Well, okay. You find that actually you do just only like drawing pictures. You're a cover artist. You're not a sequential artist.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
Or you're a sequential artist and you are not a comic artist. You're not a cover artist.
Mhm.
Or you're a colorist and you are not a penciler or an inker.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's all right. That is okay. But what that's going to do is when you have those cats that are doing that have gone through the process, they can then fine tune and hone their trajectory as far as their career and what they want to do in a better way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
that's what you got to do.
Also builds the connection of, okay, you're a dope you're a dope colorist. So let me grab you for this book in a certain project. And, again, you're already building a connection and a network of people that, can help bring projects to life later on in the future. So I'm all about trying to plant seeds and creating my own resources to do that, and a wealth of knowledge, and also giving that to other people too that I teach throughout this process as well.
And those anthologies help formulate teams and everything too. I wouldn't have met half of my creators if my letterist Max Flowers, he designs all of our books too. If I didn't run the punk anthology and discover them through there, I don't know how I've ever made that resource. And now it's such a pivotal part of my team. I can't imagine anything without Max,
Facts.
and joining in on those things and finding, and it looks like you're supporting your local shop too by giving them an exclusive that they could push and they could grow out.
I'm gonna shout these cats out right now too, because this is my shot. Bat City Comics and Games
Oh, love. Yep,
Th-
heard a lot about them. Like they're one of the
Those
best like
dudes,
supporters.
those dudes, I, every chance I get, I'm singing their praises, dude. I have never experienced a more supportive group of guys and ladies, family,
Hmm.
that has supported indie artists like they have. I understand that comic book stores are business. I get it
Yes. Yeah.
100%. And they have every right to do that. But to take that and still have the desire, one, and the drive and the consistency to continue backing us indies, even when they know full well we may not make them a whole lot of money, but
Hmm.
giving us a space to show off our stuff, and get our stuff out there, dude, is beyond like
Yeah.
helpful.
I mean, their
And
free
then,
comic book day event where they had everyone was
yeah,
listed out there and having creators and whatnot. Like, I love that.
that was
I
one
love
of
that
the
so
best
much.
free comic book days I ever been to in my entire life.
Rad.
It was
That's
such a
crazy.
blast. And that's where the Bat City anthology came from. That's the first issue of the show is
Oh,
going to be the Bat City anthology. So that's where it came from. I was like, we're all here right now. I got up and was like, yo, y'all want to do an anthology? I'm like, let's go.
love it.
You know?
Love it
So I
so
got
much.
3 artists on there plus myself. We've come together. We've created an issue, and we're in the middle of putting that together. And that Bat City anthology is probably most likely going to be out next year. So, we're working on, you know, all of these things. Obsidian Studios, my company, I'm working on trying to get more content out there and showing, but at the same time showing thanks and appreciation
Hmm.
for what they've done, you know,
Yeah.
because they were a huge help in that. And that's not to say there are other shops haven't been nice and accommodating. I have been. My book is in 4 stores in Austin,
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
but but the fact that consistently they're asking me when's the next time I'm going to have the next issue and when I'm going to do a signing. That doesn't happen.
You're
That
right.
doesn't
You're
happen,
very right. That's very
you
true.
know?
Like having a shop, that's why I love Four Color. We have a inspired ink episode with the manager of Four Color, Eric, coming out, and
Mm.
I brought them on because it was like I love finding shops that are here. Not they love comics as a whole. They're not just worried about, oh, Spider-Man's my big seller. I'm going to be focusing on Marvel and
Right.
DC and Image and Boom and all that. It's like, no, I love comics. I love sharing comics. I love discovering the artists that are going to become the Todd McFarlanes, the Brian Stelfreezes, all that type of stuff. You
Right.
want like shop owners that are almost just as passionate about it as you are. And
Yeah.
you just know that you'll go into that shop, you feel supported, you feel welcomed, you feel excited, you feel like you can share it, and they're giving you a space to share that work you've been doing. And
Yeah.
it's crazy how rare that is in comic book shops, in general. But once you find it, you just like you want to hold on to that and nurture it. And like you said, you're planting seeds no matter what. Like everywhere you go, you got to be planting those seeds for upcoming stuff, getting attention, attractions, having them know that you're a dependable creator that will
Mhm.
always provide them with something. And they're going to become your fans and they're going to become your supporters too. So,
Yeah.
like, also, when you level up in the comic book game and, comic book life, right now our audiences are Kickstarter backers and whatnot. But like if you're on a publisher, you're no longer really focused on like, oh, I need to get every one of these fans to sign up. You're focused on, I need all these shops to sign up and like buy my book. So now your audience and your demographic is focused on, these shops more than you are the individual. So it's a weird thing that evolves over time depending on which
Mhm.
direction you go in your, comic book making career. But
Right.
that small connection, developing that now means future continued success down the line. So it's a pivotal thing. If you're not selling to your shops or finding your shops, you're kind of missing out on a big aspect because they are also helping you find an audience.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why Boots to the Ground to me is so important. Getting in their face in person instead of putting it inside of a book, in Diamond or I forget the
Hmm.
other two. You don't meet the artist.
Right.
They don't see that. They're literally taking a gamble. I'd
Yep.
rather them take a gamble on my personality, who I am, my consistency. They look at and see my book in
Hmm.
person before they decide they want to carry it. and if they want to take that gamble or not,
Right.
based on what they see in their likes, rather than going into diamond and hoping that they'll get enough people that might be interested and they might sell out, whatever. Whereas if they themselves back it and it might not do well, it's less of a hit on them, because it's like, you know what, I dig it though, and I'm gonna support them, and it's way different. It's less about business and more about support, and that's why Boots to the Ground is so important to me.
Because honestly, even if you sell on Diamond and you don't get the right amount of pre-orders, they could just drop your book off of Diamond too. So I mean, there's things that can go astray from stuff like that. I mean, there's lots of success stories out there too. It's not to down any of that, but like, I think what it comes down to is like, realize where you are in your career. You think about what you want to do in your comic book career, and like defining success and knowing what success means to you and what your goals are. You know, find room for growth for sure. But I mean, like, see where you're at and be like, what's really capable for me to find a level of success now? And if you're shooting for the stars and you're jumping like, oh, I need to hit diamond distribution to be across every shop in America, like on your first book, you're already not doing it right. I'm sorry. Like, you gotta, it's very, very baby steps in the beginning, you know? Unless your family works at Warner Brothers, or you have people, and that's why like people like Tom King and all these guys get to like be in the big two, is because they had family, they had connections, they had people that led them into these things. They weren't really the discovered, like underdog that broke through all the chaos. It's more like, their mom was like a secretary somewhere in the 70s or something,
Exactly. Yeah.
My cat is beating me up for some reason right now. Thanks, dude.
I'll get it. I don't appreciate you giving attention to somebody else black other than themselves. No, I was playing. No,
honestly, T'Challa's vicious sometimes, man. He's a beast sometimes. Everyone on the show knows T'Challa because he's the destructive one. My other cat's are cute. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But dude, this has been a wonderful hour of like just awesome, just not only conversation, but just like understanding of the process of the craft, the mindset, and like knowing where you are as a creator right now, and knowing how to like approach things, how to really think about it, and like how to find a balance between like, okay, I need to be consistent. How am I going to make this happen? I know what I'm capable of. How am I going to make this happen? But still dreaming big at the same time, like knowing your limits, but knowing how far you want to go at this, at the same moment. That's precision when it comes to being a creator. You're not trying to run yourself into the ground. You're not trying to like put out the biggest book in the world and be like, this is all I'm doing, and this is all I'm going to, this is going to define me. And it is, Pantheon definitely is defining you. It's your legacy, but in the sense of like, I'm taking this as it comes, and I've created goals, and I have a vision, and I'm going to execute it. And you have the discipline for that. And that's prime. That's really key.
Appreciate it. It's important too. I says to other creators, know yourself and who you are. Mm-hmm. If you don't know yourself and who you are, you can't create goals and systems around that. You're just shooting in the dark. I know myself. I know, like I said, I have a PhD in procrastination. I know myself. So I had to create a system for myself that I knew that I could stick to and go with. So there's some things in life I can go seat of the pants, but there's certain things where it has to be organization.
Yep.
And so I'm that weird balance like that. So when it comes to this, I knew I had to have a plan. So if you know yourself and who you are as a person, you create systems for yourself around that, you'll be fine.
Know your strengths and know your weaknesses and embrace them, and work with them, and see how you could crack things open and find a code for yourself. And dude, I love that. That's some of the best advice I think I've heard on the show so far, no matter what. That's just, it's pivotal because, even I am guilty of not aligning myself with my strengths and my weaknesses. And I've bitten off way too much that I could chew. And sometimes it bites you back, and you're going to suffer those consequences, or you're going to endure it. But this has been a wonderful time talking to you. I can't wait to get you on Spilled Ink so we could shoot even more and draw and whatnot.
I was gonna say, man, it's already been an hour. I'm like, bro,
I know.
Man,
um,
chopping up with Brandon Bloxdorf, bro. That's fire. That's good.
Thank you, man. That means so much. Why don't you
That's
tell
what's-
us where we can find your stuff? Your Kickstarter is wrapping up right when this episode is airing.
yeah,
So where can we get the rest of the issues of Pantheon, and where can we find issue 4 once it is out and going too?
yeah. So yeah, so if you want to get your hands on Pantheon, theartoftheindywalker.com. Pre-orders for that, well, yeah, October. Yeah, so pre-orders for that are available
Nice.
now. So you can go ahead and pre-order that.
Should
If you
be a
find
link
me at a
right down
show,
here too. So
yeah, yeah. And if you ever are in the Texas area, you see me at a show, you can actually pre-order the book there as well. And then what I'll do is I'll have that set aside and get your copy set aside and sent out to you once it is released.
yeah.
Or you can find me on Instagram, again, ID Walker Art. Go there, you find you can talk to me, ask me any questions you like. But if you're one-on-one to get me, hey, can I get issues of Pantheon? It's not I'll hook it up. I'll send you an invoice. It's fine. I like I don't mind interacting through through that way. Everybody, I know there's a lot of people that's probably not the best way to do it, but if I get a back and forth with a customer, to me that sharpens up my customer service skills.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I talked to creator, I got directly from the creator. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can get that cloud a little bit. So there's that. Patreon, same thing. ID Walker Art. Now I will say, for updates on Pantheon and what I'm doing, not joining the free tier, joining one of the paid tiers is going to get you a lot of behind the scenes access to what is going on with Pantheon. So, and I have some things in the works right now that is pretty darn big. And the patrons will get first dibs to that.
Ooh,
huge project that's completed. And again, information as that continues to progress on Pantheon and all of that. So supporting me, I also send out some free artwork, free prints, stuff like that, as a thank you for supporting me. Keep it going. So head over there, please support if you can. Really appreciate it. And help me keep this dream alive, man.
Love it. And that's what it's all about, is helping support these creators and helping us reach these dreams. You know what I mean? Because you know what, at the end of the day, most people get off of work and they're gonna be like, oh, what can I read to distract me from the world? What can I watch to distract me from the world? What can I listen to? And guess what, we're the ones who make it. So the more you're able to support creators like this, like us, the more stuff we could give you to enjoy life and to escape and to enjoy the shapes and colors and sounds out there,
And pure escapism, people. Pantheon is pure escapism. There will be no preaching.
I love it. We'll be doing some shorts of your book too. Once I get some physical copies, I'll order from you. I'll be doing some content so I get to read them and tell everyone about it. I'm so excited for people to check it out, and they should all check out your spotlight just for a quick rundown. And if you're watching this, you got more of a rundown, but please check that out, filled with your links as well. I'm so excited to help support a creator like you, and I love seeing the grind, dude. Like, the grind means so much.
I appreciate that.
I just appreciate your time. And also social media. Where can we find you on social media, really quick?
Yeah, social media at ID Walker Art on Instagram. Nice. Obsidian Studios LLC on Instagram as well. That's the publishing deal, and then my personal art page. And then on Facebook, you can find me at The Art of E&D Walker on Facebook. So we have a group there, and there it is.
Awesome. And thank you so much for your time, for this afternoon talk that we get to have. It feels like the morning coming after a con. It's midday.
Thanks for having me on, man. I've been wanting to get on this podcast ever since I heard about it. So I was like, oh, I want to get on there. And I'm straight FOMO. Listen to every episode. I'm like, I need to get on there. And then Eric was like, yo, I know Brandon. I'm like, excuse me? So I was like, let's go. So I appreciate Eric. I appreciate Eric for getting me on, because I talked to him about it, and he's like, yeah, I know Eric. Let me send him a message, and I'll talk to him. I was like, yay. So thank you, Eric, man.
Yeah,
Making
Eric
it
Allred, great
yeah.
creator, also part of the Apollo City Comics team. You can check out Outer Space issue 1 and issue 2 should be shipping out as this episode is out too. So you guys can snag
Okay.
that. And the Apollo City Comics website should be up right now too, where you could buy those issues from Eric Allred too. So check that out as well. We love our amazing stoner creators that with their phenomenal books because they're just hilarious and amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, great stuff. Yeah, great shout out to Eric and Ben over at Outer Space and Jackie as well, phenomenal artist too.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, my guy. To our audience, don't forget we're bringing back Inspired Inc. We have so many packed episodes with just amazing creators, shop owners, all sorts of stuff. We have our spotlights that I hope you're checking out. They're about to come out in abundance as well. We're trying to get everyone who could do a spotlight to do an Inspired Inc. Sometimes it takes some time. Sometimes we just do one or the other. But there's so much content, so many indie creators for you guys to discover, to support. You'll find your flavor. You'll find your vibe. I promise there's a book out there for you. And until next time, thank you so much. Thanks for hanging. Stay creative and stay inspired. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of Inspired Inc. featuring Ian Walker. If you're a comic creator ready to bring your vision to life, look no further than Comix Wellspring. We're not just printers, we're your partners in creativity. With our exceptional customer service, you'll never feel lost in the process. Need your comics fast? Our lightning quick turnaround times have got you covered. And for those big ideas, our industry-leading bulk pricing options make large print runs a breeze. Don't let your masterpiece gather dust on your hard drive. Click the link on the screen now, and let's turn your pages into reality.